Recording started. All right, I think it's not recording. Okay. Presuming you guys can see PowerPoint package on screen.
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. Oh, I think it's all functional now. Scrambling around this morning. Well, hello class. Welcome to unit number 4. Week number 4. We are in the downside of this course now. We're going to get into the hard material for this particular class this week. I have to apologize up front that not all the material is yet fully sufficient, but get through it nonetheless. So I didn't get any questions this week. Any particular questions they wanted asked for unit 3 or before? All right. So the objectives of unit 4 this time is going to go over some of the its mathematical functions, capabilities, other aspects of Excel that are that was weird. Just did it again. I'm guessing Zoom is having issues today because it just crashed and rebooted itself again on my machine. Can everybody see the screen again?
No, I can't see the screen, but mine rebooted as well. So
It still says I'm recording.
okay, I can see it.
Okay. Well, that's weird. It's just that's not a good sign if it's doing that suddenly. I wonder if I need to either reboot my computer or entirely or upgrade Zoom again. I'm going to kill a few services on my computer real quick. Okay. All right, hopefully it runs a little better. Something's eating up GPU memory. That's weird. Huh. Yeah, Zoom's eating up 30% of a GPU, and I've got dual NVIDIA cards in my computer. Okay. Anyways, back to where we're going. Hopefully this worked itself out in the end. Problem solving tools. Yeah. So Excel's one of the benefits is from a business logic perspective is you can use it to answer questions or mathematical formulas to help you resolve problems or answer problems with it, right? So so we could do that by building the necessary pivot tables or by using data in the databases or by using mathematical functions and capabilities and logic functions, right? So I'm going to get into a bit of the pivot tables and a bit of the logic functions today. in order to help with their understanding for Unit 4 and Unit 5. So as far as progress inside the class, we have a fairly uneven level of participation. I am still happy to see that most of that a large percentage of the class is doing really well in this. So keep it up. And if you need to, I went and graded some older assignments today to help, which brings people's grades up. But I am accepting older assignments, and in fact, I'm going to accept them all the way back to week 1. So gives everybody the ability to improve their overall scores in the system. So, but I will apply tardiness penalties as well in the process of that. So taking all the way back to Unit 1. So if you do want to work on some older stuff, you certainly have the ability to bring up your scores. Unit 3 completed this past Sunday. Its timeline. The Unit 4 is this particular section, and next week as Unit 5 as we get into the Thanksgiving holiday timeline. So remember that the grades are due. The last day of class is the Tuesday, typically after. It's usually Tuesday, the week after the week of Unit 5 is due. So that would be right along the very start of when the next session will be there, and we will be able to get your grades in at that point. So then about 2-3 days after the end of the last class is when I have to submit the final grade. So if you need to submit for a incomplete, this is the week to request it. Is during at the end of Unit 4. Requesting an incomplete during Unit 2 timeline. Had someone do that, though I was told by university that was way too soon, so I don't think that got accepted yet. But just so you know, if you thought you need an incomplete, please let me know in the next about next week, so I can get the submission in for that. All right, in the discussion boards, it's going to go over the benefits of pivot tables and charts, and how to use some of those pivot tables inside of the. Turn my phone off. Sorry about that. How to use the pivot tables and what it's good for, basically. So it's there to help make intelligent decisions. So there's a small video here on pivot tables. I will probably bring that up here in a second. The unit components for this particular unit is about multi-sheet workbooks, filtering advanced data, how to use it as a database. I gave you an example of how you can use Excel as an OLE last week. That's an example of using it like a database, where you can build it inside of another application, especially with Word or PowerPoint. How you can and it also talks about how to import external text files into Excel. One example I showed you was how to drag and drop a CSV file as a worksheet directly into a workbook. That is an example. Another one is how to do it with bringing in, say, lots of data, and once you have that data and say copy and paste it into some Excel spreadsheet, you could, just as a quick example, you could do a text to columns. Text to columns lets you then break up that data based on some attribute. It can either be delimited or it can be fixed with. If you do it delimited, say I did it based on commas and space, you can see the preview down here where it will break it up with these spaces, so that I can say multiply 1 by x by 6. So from this cell turns into 4 different cells. So if I did it that way, you can break up imported text like this as well as just copying and pasting. Or you could do right click on a tab, you can say move or copy. And if you do that, you can either move it to a new book, or you can move it around to different things. These names here, either If it's in the same book, you can do it and move it into places around within there. So if I want to move like sum to product, say to the end, I could do that. You'll see this reordered this worksheet this way, right? So, or I could drag and drop it that way. But that's just basic mechanics. Okay. So I didn't bring up the that particular file, but generally in pivot tables, if you create pivot tables based on a set of data so that you can manipulate the data in a manner that allows you to okay. I think you guys can see the Excel sheet, right? Where it's saying year, course, student level. Okay. Okay, thank you. So with that, right, so you can make a pivot table, and the pivot table can be used for advanced analysis of data, right? So an example is, in this case, I'm going to create a pivot table with this range of data: year, course, student level. I did it by typing up here in the search. You can do pivot chart, pivot tables. I'm going to do chart and table, taking this option. That allows you to build a graphical summary of what it would be for this particular data set. So in this case, I'm going to use this range of that tab A1 through C41, and I'm just going to take the default settings with this highlighted section, hit OK. That build me. In this case, I can then build a chart, a graph. This gives me analysis on the various. Don't want some. I want this to be filter. No, be an axis. So you drag around the different values so you get it to show it the way you want. So in this case, I can then say I have this many students in this particular year of that particular course, and it builds me the graph both from a summary level in that context, as well as then giving me the ability to filter and summarize all the different pieces that I want to. And the pivot table graph will then dynamically update as you're watching, based on what I'm doing with it. So in this case, I'm just saying I don't care about the individual years. I just want to know the particular courses and the number of students that showed up in that course. So with that, I took data, used a pivot table to create both the pivot table and a chart related to it, and I was able to get it to show me information about that. Now, so you could take, say, inventory data, and you could take something very simple where you copy and pasted some amount of data into something very basic here from somebody's website, and you could very quickly figure out how to figure out how to gain new knowledge into, say, a vendor that you have, right? Now, say we wanted to have something, we had a whole bunch of 2022 data now show up. Make it all first year just because we can. Now, if I go back to the pivot table over here, I may need to do a refresh on this data. And when I did the refresh, you see how it now suddenly changed from what it was prior to the insertion of new data into the pivot table range to now from here with a bunch of 1s, 2s, 3s, or 5s. I do a refresh here, and now I have 15 instances of this class and a couple more instances of the other class, and you see how the chart actually changes, right? So that's how you can, when you do a refresh on everything, you can get it to show you various pieces of how that worked with the pivot table. So that's where the benefit of the pivot table comes in. It lets you do analysis, and you can do real-time changes to it based on any number of aspects, right? So if I wanted to say these are second year, third year, I come back over here, I do a refresh on it again, and refresh here. Why did that change? Oh, it's because let's just damage all the data. Why don't we? There we go. So in this case, garbage in, garbage out. But you can take your data inputs and with pivot tables figure out how to get a glance at a look at a glance in order to or day in the life look at it, so you can figure out business logic based on that. So now with some of the database functions and aspects of Excel, it is possible now to have multiple users using the same Excel sheet at the same time. That is done via newer version of Excel allows that. You have to have like either a database on the back end or using it integrated with something like SharePoint, where you guys have interactive file shares that you can do that with. So, but what it does is let most people go in there, and in that case, I could have me and say somebody else literally going in there and modifying cells on a worksheet together, and I can watch them doing stuff and moving around in the same worksheet or other worksheets, and I can trace what they're doing while doing it. We can both interactively change this at the same time. So it allows people at larger businesses to actually have collaborative working in Excel. Same thing with if you did it in the browser-based version of Excel now, where you can actually, while it has less functions than say the physical application of Excel, you could watch other people doing cell changes as need be, so that you can work on large sets of data, multiple people in a row, and then in a database format, you can use it to do advanced queries. So now Access is an actual database tool. Excel is not an actual database tool. And the biggest difference is Excel works generally from memory or from updates through SharePoint that lets you watch what other people are doing in that context, right? So it's using its both updates to drive as well as updates to memory to make that work. Now, I don't think IntelliPath has been updated for the SharePoint capability in its questioning, which is where this looks a little confusing, because Access is a true database. Databases always work from storage at all times. They don't work from memory. So whenever you're changing any given component or access or cell or a piece of data within a database, it literally is a read write from the database logged as a change as you go. Now Excel gains that capability within SharePoint, but by default, Excel is a work from memory tool only, in that it's in a spreadsheet that is working as you do it, and it only saves its changes when you literally hit the save button. In databases, every time you go and make a change to a piece of data, that information is automatically saved to storage. So that's really the biggest difference is Excel is, or Word or almost any other product, only saves when you hit the save button. So it's possible to crash in the middle of something, like we saw Zoom already crash before today. It's possible to do it, and if it's able to recover, it will. However, if it crashes, you'll have to restart the program, If it can't recover what you were doing at the time, you'll go back to whatever the last saved point was, and then you'll pick up from that instance on. So it's possible to lose data that you're working on in that setting if you're not hitting save button fairly frequently. I'm sure you've probably heard of horror stories where people worked on something for hours and then it crashed and they couldn't recover it. So everybody's guilty of that when they use lots of Word products, lots of Microsoft products, Word, Excel. I've been guilty of that. I've had a few cases where I had to spend several hours reworking something at the office because just didn't think to hit save often enough. And that is a downside of Excel because it does everything in memory. So just keep that in mind. But users of Access should be doing things where they're working in large data sets and doing advanced queries and have to work from storage on lots of pieces of tables of information. Excel is best if you're just primarily working with numerical data in a quick format that you want to, and it's easy access, easy usage of it. Access can be hard because it's a database or Oracle, Enterprise Oracle. Those are both can be complicated to get tables set up and it can be hard to unless you're familiar with doing databases, making updates quickly. So that's where the pros and benefits are. So remember, Access does it from storage because it's a database. Microsoft Excel does it from memory because it's an application. So that's why these two pieces of information is important. And for IntelliPath. If you wanted to build multiple levels of filtering and formatting into it, it is very possible to do so. That's one benefit of Excel is it lets you do that in order to help maintain your ability to do logic and problem solving with it, right? So let you manipulate data or so you can filter in such a way so you can easily extract the data if need be to reduce it down. So say, for instance, you have a large set of data, and I'm going to throw up a random spreadsheet here just because. Say you have a large set of data, and within that data set, if I wanted to, instead of copying the entire data set, and I just wanted to take like a piece of it, if I just get a copy, I get the whole thing, right? But if I wanted to, instead of copying, say I just wanted a piece of what mattered, I could take a piece of what mattered, put it there, and then I could say, I can either delete the pieces I no longer need by deleting entire rows, or if I wanted to, I could have done it through filtering. That was weird. Where'd it go? Okay. I could have done it through filtering by saying this is what I want filtered. Now I want to only get something of greater than. Oh, this is because this is merged solver here. I can't do that. Okay. Say something that's only car related. So in this case, I can then, it just brings up this piece, which I could then highlight, copy, and it'll only give me that piece that I want from that. So I could do the filtering ahead of time, advanced logic filtering, and I can get out the aspect that I care about, and then I can bring it over to be manipulated in other manners. So, okay. Now that is a way to do data extraction. Not to be manipulated, not to be confused with data exfiltration. Exfiltration people use to not only manipulate data, but is used as a means to rob data or to extract data from a system, usually for nefarious reasons or for cybersecurity issues, right? you've probably heard a lot of people having your information stolen online. Well, that's an example of where data exfiltration happened against a source of data. Could be Excel, could be a database, could be a website, and it's therefore unauthorized removal of data. Well, data extraction is a process of obtaining and replicating the data for analytical reasons. Apparently, one person keeps reconnecting and has their video on by default. Okay. Hope that made sense. All right, another question that's come up from other students inside of OLE is it's the object linking and embedding, right? So it's a way to display tables and graphs within Word is through the embedding use of OLE. So you can have something that's actively updated. So I went into that quite a bit last week. Put this in here as a reminder to just don't forget that that is in fact important. And it's where the paste link or the object work link is necessary as the paste as or paste special, so you can get the OL link to work correctly. And it allows you to enhance Word reports, presentation, slides, etc. So Word and Excel are usually typically used for financial information together because it's really good at showing trends of values in a grid that is typically related financially. That's just so people don't get confused by where IntelliPath is going with that particular question. So another thing is you can use it to rank choice things for you. And with that, I'll get into a little bit of the rank choice here in a little bit, but you can, by ranking things, you can build math and formulas into this in this case, right? So if you look at the scoring summary, this is the average of the scores for across that board, assuming some weighting category. In this case, 13 divided by 5 makes sense that it's a 2.6. So it's probably equally weighted across all categories to get the 2.6 against these types of categories, right? So it just give you an extract of I had to think about that. That extract out of my dissertation is what this was, but but yeah, you can have that done for you automatically, and as you update this stuff, these numbers have been filled in if you have the formulas all correct. Now, there's something called the product formula. The product function. The product function is written like this, where you go product and it's a cell, comma, cell. Effectively, I'm saying in this context, I'm saying cell A1 would be the 1, B1 here being the 6, and you can extrapolate on down. So in that case, it's 1 times 6 multiplied out. That's what product does for you, right? It takes 2 cells or any number of cells, because you can actually have multiple and this is an example of where it's actually written, so you can see it, where a product is 2 things. Now, if I wanted to say, I can do multiple sets of these. So if I wanted to, I could do it like this, where all of these numbers in this entire range are now being multiplied together, and it comes out to a much larger thing. So while not necessarily useful in that context, if I made, say, this be quantity, this be cost, made this a dollar value, this makes this a dollar value, and I wanted to add in a third example of, say, facility, or maybe not facilities, how about, say, stores, and or I could do it like this, where I can say this product is then a combination of all three components to that. I can then get you a better view of how many stores, number of quantities at each store, and the cost of the product, and you can get a figure out of where we're going with this, right? So you can use the product capability to then tell you something about what you want to accomplish with this. Okay. But effectively, the product is your multiplication function. Now, you could do the same thing by quite literally going sum of that. Instead of comma, you can do it as an asterisk. That has the same effect because it's a multiplication of those two cells, and you could do it. But the correct way within Excel is by using the product function, because it has other impacts within, like, that you wouldn't see obviously, but it without diving deep into pivot tables. But that there's a reason why product works better in pivot tables than the multiplication does. So hope that made sense. So another aspect of in Telepath I'm going to get into with this is the functions of how powers work within math. So if you've ever had a case where you had a base value, in this case a base value of 2, you had a power of 2, that means you have 2 to the second power, so you multiply the base by the number of times power is there. So that goes 2 by 2 makes 4. If you had 3 to the power of 2, it's 3 times 3, which means 9. 4 to the power of 2 is 4 times 4 is 16, right? And then you get into the cases of how negatives work. In the case of 2 powers with negatives always cancel out to make 2 negatives make a positive. So you same kind of effect. Now, when you do with a fractional number, it's always the same common portion of the fraction. We have to be out there. You have to normalize it so you have the same common denominator, or not denominator, same common. Can't think of the term, but it's the piece underneath the slash for there. And when you do that, say the power of 2 is number of times it multiplies itself. Well, 1/4 or 1/4 is multiplied to the power of 2 is 1/16, and that's mathematically it's actually representative 1/4 parenthetical to the power of 2, but it works out like that. So if you did negative power of 2 against the same base values, that's where this other math comes in, and you have 2 to the negative 2, which turns it into 1/2 squared, or 1/2 squared, and then that 1/2 times 1/2 equals 1/4, or 1/9, 1/16. So the negative power basically flips it in such a manner in that context, right? So that's why 2 to the negative 2 works out like this, and say 2/4 to the negative 2 flips it positive to whole number of 16. So this is an example of where this particular usage of exponentials are within Excel. And if I can find it, exponents. You can do that inside of Excel by using the power function of equals power A2 to A that, or if you wanted to say, in the case of this, it's base power of 2 to the e of -2. So you go power A2 comma E2, and that starts to be how that's interesting. So that's how you get to these types of things. So that's where power and exponents start to matter inside of Excel. There is at least one question that's confused everybody in the past, where it asks for what e to the power is. Exponent exp is actually an Excel function that has a specific value to it, because, and I don't know where this comes from, but within math, the e is a special value of 2.71828. So if you did that, taking it to the next level, if you did say e to the 5, right? Then in theory, oops, it's not going to do that because that's a number, hard-coded number. All right, so this should be, if this was built correctly, would have been that there. So then e to the 5 comes out to 148.4, and you may get a question like that in telepath. So now if you wanted to build, like, figure out your compound interest, you could have your principal, your rate, your number of years, and with this being how the formulas work out, you could then figure out that your monthly compound interest is an additional $161 here for your rate to come out, and then it starts to grow at that point. So hope that all made sense, not just me rambling on. So in ranking, and like I said, this is where I need to like work on building this package out a bit more. If you had a bunch of numbers you needed to rank, and if you ranked them in order, they'd be, say, this set. If you needed to rank them in reverse order, it say 1 to 15 with whatever missing. In increasing order, decreasing order starts from the highest going down. The opposite of increasing versus decreasing, you'll get these orders of 15, 12, 9, 8, etc. Right? If you were given a random set of numbers and you were told you need to rank them in some manner, that is, if you did increasing order, rank 1, you would know that, all right, if my value is 2, my rank that I'm assigning it is 1. Okay. So in that case, if I did this and say this was 2, this is 3, this is 4, and I went down the line in correctly, then if I needed to say, I needed to know what my first order ranked is, the value of that is going to be 2. And your values, you can rank your values based on a need of logic as opposed to an actual value. So, and where I'm getting with that is, this is it. No, that's not it. Yeah. So there's a product. It's called a sum product. It's a function that lets you take trigonometric mathematics for that. So you can build it so that you can build up a logic in such a way that you can determine if my values mean this, but my order of ranking means this. I can get Excel to then display it in the manner that makes sense, so I can figure out the right types of values. Okay, so and as a such, right? So this is where you can start extrapolating various answers from that type of stuff. So if something needs to be ranked in an order, it doesn't necessarily have to be by value, but most times it's going to be based by value. But if I needed to say, if I had, what's a good example of this? If I had to determine how many of some number of things that are on the upper value, and I needed to know, say, the top 20% of my values, right? Let's go back to Excel. If I wanted to take this and what's the top 20% of my values? Well, if I knew my total was, say, some product of all of these values, I will know that this value, this is at 62. But if I wanted to know, say, that times 0.025, that means 25% of that is at 62. But if I wanted to say A13 minus that sum product, that means pretty much at 46. So what values of mine would be needed to reach 46? Or instead of, let's not use sum product, actually, let's use average in this context. Average, this number of average comes out to 6.8. If I want to do the average minus 25%, so it's slightly smaller than average, then anything with a 5 value, or if I just wanted the first 25%, it would be, let's just do this first 25%. So anywhere between 1 to say 5, I could then figure out, say, that's the range I need to worry about, 1 to 5. That would be the lower 25% of my value. So I could say, ultimately, I can have it use conditional formatting to be easier, but I could say that that is actually my bottom 25% of my values, even though it looks like it's almost half the number of values. Because of the size of some of the values, it's really the lower 25% of those values. And that's where ranking kind of matters, right? So you're trying to come up with a range of where you want to determine your ranges versus your greater whole. And then you can use your logic to figure out, all right, I'm within this range. I need to take action based on this range, because it's say you're trending in a you're running out of inventory kind of question, right, in this context. So, or you can use it for any number of things, but that's how ranking matters, right? So ranking, you try to figure out your median, your average, and then try to figure out of that what's your upper and lower ranges within that, so you can then rank them accordingly. So I need to work on my slides for this, I know. Hope that made sense. Any questions on ranking? Okay. All right. When it comes to like comparing the values, if you use the compare function, compare function, right? Logic. Yeah. Okay. So if you had two numbers to compare, say 3, 6, and you did an XOR on that, right? The question is that, all right, with an XOR, you're saying in this case, is the value of 3 less than the value of 6? Or is the value of 4 greater than the value of 3? Because you look at there, you're comparing these 4 values in that manner, right? Well, because these are both true in XOR, 2 trues make a false. If you wanted to say, if H5 and I5 were the same, which they're not because of the 3 and 6. You're comparing them. That's false. And it's H5. Sorry, that's 2 to 2. That's true. Sorry. So 2 and 2 are equal. Therefore, you have a true. H3 is not greater than 6. So you have a true and a false. With XOR, you get a true. In the case of H3 is greater than H6, that's a false. And H4 is less than I4, which is also false. And then you have an H5 equals H5, which is a true. In that case, this works out to be 2 falses make a true, and you have 2 trues being true. So that's kind of how XOR kind of works, right? So here's a quick chart that helps give you the not, the and, the or, and the XOR results. So if your values were true and true, not gives you 2 trues make a false, and 2 trues make a true. In or, 2 trues either is true, so it's true. In XOR, it's 2 trues are false. So that's how logic kind of generally works, right? So if you had it to be true false, your not finds, well, they're not the same. Your not of X becomes not true. No, it's not doing comparison, it's just doing the one. Yeah, so not of a true is true, and not of a false is not of a false is true, not of a true is false, right? It's the opposite of this for your logic. Not gives you the opposite of that. The and is those two together working together. So 2 trues make a true. A false and a true and a false always equals false. 2 regardless of the order, and 2 falses always equal false. That's where the and comes in. In the ors, it's 2 trues make a true and a false make a true, regardless of order, and 2 falses make a false. And in XOR, it's 2 trues are false, a true and a false is a true, a false and a true and a true, because they're not the same, but 2 falses are also false. You're going to need this kind of quick reference chart to understand this in the future. So it's kind of confusing, but if you did it with the not, and, or XOR, that's how you can get answers based on your values. It gets more complicated with and, or, and XOR when you go to 3 values, where you have an X, Y, and Z value, in which case all trues are true, and it's 2 trues and a false is a false because you have a false somewhere. And in or, it tends to take the 2 trues more than a false. And in XOR, it takes the opposite of the or. So in which case, an or, if true, if it's any true, or gives you a true if it's any true anywhere in there, and or gives you only false if it's all false, and gives you a false if anyone has a false, or is anyone's true is a true. In XOR, it comes down to if they're all true, it's true. If they're all false, it's false. And then the other one comes down to which has the higher quantity, I think, of 2 trues turning into a false. Then you have 2 falses. Yeah, XOR is really a pain in the ass. So, all right. So, anyways, you're going to definitely want your quick reference chart for this kind of thing. Mean versus median. Mean is basically you're taking kind of like if you had these as your values and you divided it by a number, your mean is your quantity of numbers to come up with that, right? So you take those values, come out 24 divided by 4, you get a mean of 7. Your medium is where you take the average of the two middle values by eliminating the two larger values. So you get a 6 plus 8 divided by 2. In this case, it's also a 7. Now, if you change up that math, it would work out differently, but that's the difference between mean and median and average, right? Typically, average and mean can work together. Median is what you need to eliminate the extremes because you need a flatter bell curve in order to get your answer correct. So some of the other product formulas in there is sum product is used for summary, and product is there. It's basically a formula for multiplication. Sum product involves two operations within the formula where they're multiplied and then the products are then added together. It's useful for business purposes. The if condition is you can do an if this, true, if false. Basically, it comes out if I go to the Excel and I did that, right? I could say if that was greater than that, it's we'll just write true, greater, or false, lesser. So now quotes. Because I'm using hard-coded values, you have to quote that as your answer. So you can build your logic and to give you exact answers, right? So in that case, if I did it this way and then say that same thing, I can say false, this is not greater than, this is greater than, this is not greater than. So, and you can actually embed that too by having multiple if statements in there. So if I wanted to say, let's see, if I wanted to do this again, I could say this is H3 is less than I3, comma, false lesser, or I can say equals. Yeah, correct it. Okay. And yeah, but you get that point, right? So you can say, you can build in your if statements embedded as well so that you can build logic. And so you can have a bunch of tables, do some math against it. And it's like, all right, well, I need to determine my logic. What's my answer that I'm looking to try to solve the solution of? And you can build ifs or functions to come up with that answer. XOR is a fancy way to doing it, but in this case, if you needed to build greater, lesser, or equals, there you go. So like in Excel, if one was used to represent 2 and is used to represent false, which is generally the case, then what your logic expression is for and of x and y, and how does it correspond to or of x and y. So in this case, it assumed you know how to build the formula for it and or did that inside of Excel to come up with that answer. But ultimately, the correct answer is 1 minus x times 1 minus y to answer the logic of true false formula math in that case, right? So it's not real clean on what intent IntelliPath was asking of that particular question there. So if I go back to, well, I encourage you to go and watch these 3 videos for pivot tables to learn more about them, and to if you need to know more about advanced filtering, there's a video there, link for it as well. I will add links to ranking and XOR logic for next class. So always work in progress, this class is. Any questions on anything I've talked about tonight that you guys wanted to have asked, or if there's anything specific you'd want to go over, feel free to chime in. All right, well, other than that, I will call this good enough, and I appreciate your time, and good luck on Unit 4, and I look forward to seeing the results. Thank you. Good night, everyone.